Pochettino's first competitive US men's national team camp was a success, with a 1-0 win away in CONCACAF, which many media shows were telling us during the Greg Berhalter era that it was nearly impossible to do so, but Pochettino did it right away with the United States, and then a 4-2 win at home against Jamaica. With those two results, the United States defeated Jamaica 5-2 on aggregate and have advanced to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Nations League, where they're going to face Panama in March of 2025. It seems like the ship is turning, that progress has been made. Fellas, are we back? Or was it just Jamaica? Hi, if you are new here, I'm Filippo and welcome to Tactical Manager TV and welcome to our US men's national team camp recap episode. Every single day or two following a US men's national team camp, we do a full camp recap. It's a channel tradition, just like Mariah Carey during Christmas. Same thing. And as always, we have Adam, USMNT Stan on X, as our guest. We're gonna go through two players that had their stocks go up this camp, two players that had their stocks go down this camp, one big positive, one big negative, and then we're gonna rate the camp from 1 to 10, with 5 being average. Now listen, we're not gonna have the US men's national team abroad episode for the next 2 Mondays because we're going to be on vacation, but we have many great episodes that are scheduled and will be released within the next 7 to 10 days, including 2 episodes next week with Herculez Gomez. You are not going to want to miss out, so make sure you stick around for that. With that said, make sure to hit the like button and let us know in the comment section for this specific camp. Give us 2 players that had their stocks go up and 2 players that had their stocks go down. Alright, I'm not going to request during the video when we're talking to Adam for you to hit the like button, so please do that now. It's a great way to support the channel. Let's roll the intro and bring in Adam. Okay, we are back for a camp recap here with Adam. Adam, it's been a while since we've had a very positive camp. Actually, I'm going to go as far as saying that ever since we started doing these camp recaps, we've never had a camp with so many positives like this past one in November against Jamaica, right?
Facts. And I'm not going to bury the lead at all. We always do our biggest positive, right? I've got 2 in the bank. But the biggest positive from this camp, Tack, has to be this is the best camp since Nations League 2023, right? I mean, the hero, our hero BJ, right? Like, it's just hard to imagine saying that this is anything other than the most promising, the best you'd feel coming out of a camp, right? To me, even better than we won the Nations League last year, but we like squeaked by Jamaica in a way that like just didn't feel very good to us. So I don't know. That's the only other camp where we had 2 wins.
Well, and when you go back to that BJ Callahan camp, the performances were really good. But at the same time, we had a sour taste in our mouth because we had just hired Greg Berhalter.
That's fair too. Yeah, that's
so we weren't as excited. But now,
true.
We obviously don't want to overreact. So I'm just gonna put this on screen. We got to win away against Jamaica. It was a grind. It wasn't pretty, but we won away against Jamaica, which the Berhalter shows kept saying that was nearly impossible, right? We heard that so many times. And then at home, it was 4-2. There were some defensive issues, which we're going to talk about that probably when we talk about negatives, positives, and even players specifically, the stocks down maybe. But we saw so much progress in the style of play, the fluidity. I don't want to get ahead of myself here because that's probably going to be part of the positives. But the United States pulled 5-2 on aggregate against Jamaica. The performance against Jamaica, especially in that first half, it's probably one of the best performances we've seen from the U.S. men's national team in quite some time. The team looks so good, fluid, missing players like Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, Balogun, Dest, like missing guys like that, and still completely running over Jamaica. If we kept the intensity and we had a bench, probably would have been 5-6-0 at home, which would be tremendous against Jamaica. Now, obviously, me and Adam, we're aware that Jamaica was missing a few players. They're dysfunctional. And we're not saying that the U.S. men's national team is fully back, right? Because we still have a lot to prove. But Adam, are we kind of back?
I mean, I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say we're on the right track to being back. Like, okay. We are, you know, it is still TBD for sure, but all we wanted to see in these first couple camps from Poch was growth, right? And I'll make there's a couple big context things from this Jamaica camp, right? Was this Jamaica team awesome? You already said it. No, but they weren't. I heard you and Pete talking about this. This isn't Grenada. This isn't, this isn't an island nation. You know,
we lost to Trinidad last year. We lost to Trinidad and Tobago last year.
Correct. They're not a small island nation full of garbage players. Like, you had guys playing in England. You had like legitimate soccer players on the team, right? Like, it wasn't guys playing in completely unknown leagues. So that's one. Two, we almost lost it. We were basically a second away from losing to this team, an own goal away from losing to this team. There was almost the same type of roster a year ago, right?
6 months ago.
Oh, sorry, not the year. Yeah, 8 months ago, whatever it was. And so that's huge. And then lastly, and this is big, like, what is the coach saying about the progress? I'm reading the quotes, trying to, watch the interviews. Poch's comments about the first half were like glowing. He was like, that was exactly what I've been trying to capture. I'm, really impressed that the guys picked it up. I'm paraphrasing. Really impressed the guys picked it up so quickly, right? And really excited about where it can go. So you could see like the coach is almost like, we're ahead of schedule. That's what it felt like. Right? He felt like that first half was almost like probably even ahead of what he would expect our guys to be able to do. He's clearly putting in some awesome principles of play that we're picking up. We're picking up pretty quickly, especially in the attacking half.
And I was told by, some people that coaching didn't matter that much, and the players, but clearly, Joe Lowry. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. As we said, Jamaica, we struggled more. So we've seen progress from the Berhalter era. Now we have to see how this will translate against much better opponents. And we're probably not going to see that until probably the second semester of next year when we play some better friendlies, because we're probably going to play, who knows, in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals, then Gold Cup. But anyhow, it's promising because we've seen this team suck away and we won. And we've seen us play very bad CONCACAF opponents at home where we like squeaked by with a 1-0 win. This time it was different. It felt different. The grit was there. But let's just start diving into things, because as always, we start with players that had their stocks go up. And in the past few camps, it was kind of funny because me and you were like trying to get a player, and most of the players that their stocks went up were players that weren't there in previous camps. It was like, oh, they weren't there, so they didn't suck. Their stocks went up. But this time, there's a mix of players that their stocks went down that were in camp, and there's a ton of players that played very well this camp and their stocks went up. As always, I'm a gentleman, Adam, and I'm going to let you go first because you are one of my favorite guests here. Who is your stock up? One of the two.
Ricardo Pepi. Like he scored in both games, right? He's, I think, been on a tear scoring for us. Even in a lot of games where we haven't had that many opportunities, he seems to find goals, which is a great thing from a striker. I still think Ballow's probably my starting 9 if he's back and in form. If anything, to be honest, Tack, and I know a lot of people, I was fighting with some people on X last night about this, but I think if you put Ballo in that game, I think he's actually making even more dangerous runs with the type of attacking patterns we were creating. Ballo's strength is can you get the ball into zone 14 and then let your 9 make runs off the back shoulders of defenders? That seemed to be what we were looking for, which is really promising, because in the past it's been we're going to trim the edges and cross, and that's not Ballo's strength, right? But if we're going to be a team that can really create attacking opportunities in the middle of the park, all of a sudden Ballo becomes an optimal striker for that style, right? So I'm super excited about seeing him come in. But Pepi is starting to become a guy who I'm man, if this guy can, elevate his game even more, which I think he's going to need to find a club where he's going to play a lot. He's going to become the guy at a club. I think that's going to help him. But there's a path to a 21-year-old Pepi really challenging Ballo. And I don't know if I was 100% there a year ago. And I've gotten to a point where I'm I could see him challenging him. And I think there's some situations where Pepi might be even potentially a better option. I'm not the biggest Pepi guy, just being frank with everyone. I haven't been a Pepi rider. I like him and think he has a lot of potential. But It's just good to see a 9 performing consistently, honestly. And if you put that on the back of Ballo actually had a good summer for us, we don't really have much of a 9 problem anymore, it feels like.
No, I'm not going to talk too much about that because pretty much most of what you said I agree with. I still think Balogun's number 1. I think when in doubt, Balogun will be the starter. There are some specific situations where Pepe might be more useful. Sometimes maybe playing a very, very like bunkering team with a low block, and then you might need a guy that just puts it in the back there, like a guy that can just kind of like his goals weren't tap-ins, but you know what I mean when I say a guy that can tap it in, and he can do that. But if you're going to play in transition or a better team or you need more combination play, Balogun has more of that skill set that can destabilize the defense. Pepe is just more of a pure finisher. I don't think the holdup is there. I don't think pressing is good with Pepe. I like Pepe a lot, and I root for him a lot, but I still have Balogun ahead of him. But one thing is for sure, myself included, I had Sargent ahead of Pepe not so long ago. And Pepe right now, due to availability and performances, he's earned that. And I am ready to say Pepe right now is ahead of Sargent. It's not really debatable. If it is to become debatable again, Sargent's going to have to do a lot for Norwich, come into the national team, and perform for the national team. Right now, it's Pepe that's number 2. And yeah, I don't think he's there with Balogun yet, but he is definitely a viable option to push Balogun. And I mean, there's no criticism to Pepe. He did his job, scored a goal each game. Stock is up. Doesn't matter. But everyone in the comment section, let us know. Do you think Pepe can compete with Balogun or not? I think he can. I just don't think he is ahead of him. That I agree with Adam. You know my stock up, my first one? Tenor Testament.
Ooh, yeah, he's on my list.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. And we're going to get to Johnny soon, but it was like, it always feels like every camp is like, this is going to be Johnny's camp, the opportunity. And I don't want to overly criticize it because, I mean, he got injured, right? So what can we say? It's not like he dropped the stinker. He got injured. But again, it wasn't Johnny's camp. But then Tenor Testament, after, I would say the away game, he had his ups and downs, had some moments that were really shaky and some not. But at home, when we were playing with Weston next to him, very dynamic double pivot there. Actually, Weston even pushing higher. And then A-Rob coming in and helping sometimes defensively, giving that athleticism there. Tenor Testament was brilliant that game. He was really freaking good. He showed he can challenge for a starting spot in this team, or to the very least, be there in the roster. To the very least. And if you go back to October, he wasn't even in the roster. He was called in after, I think Johnny got cut due to injury. And then Testament came on. I didn't think he even played that much. But this camp, he kind of became almost like a roster lock based on these performances. Also, again, I don't react to one game. Club-wise, we've seen him have some good moments with Lyon over the past 4 weeks. I've talked about this every weekend. We've seen in the Europa League and even in France, he's looked good. But Tenor Testament's stock went up because he was a guy that we were like, is he a roster player or not? And now he's definitely a roster player and perhaps fighting for a starting spot, depending on who's available or not. So Testament is my first stock up.
So I think for my second, I'm going to cheat a little bit. We like cheating in this segment. But maybe not in the way you
cheating. You ain't trying. We cheat all the time.
But maybe not in the way you think I am. I'm just going to go stock up, and I'm going to go outside of the player sphere. I just want to open up 2 minutes for me to talk about this and to hear your thoughts. Stock up on the Poch system, right? Which, if you've watched Poch's teams in the past, right, I think you understand what it can look like when it's fully fleshed out. I don't think he was able to get there with PSG for a lot of reasons. I think in the second half of the Chelsea season, he was starting to like piece things together. But I think the thing that I was hoping we would see out of this Poch team is positional fluidity, guys not feeling stagnant, guys understanding like soccer relationships, right? You were talking about this on the live stream. I was watching, Tack, like the ability for, and you just referenced it, for West to feel like, okay, I'm going to go up and play in more of like a 10 half space. And I know that A-Rob's going to fill in behind me, right? There were times, right, where we had Weah wide on the left. He tucked in, and Pulisic came back to that left spot to be an outlet, right? And I'll reference this argument. When I was really angry that Gio was playing kind of like in a double pivot defensive midfielder position, people would argue, you don't know soccer. That happens all the time. And I'm like, I agree. That does happen all the time. staying there all game shouldn't happen all the time, right? Like, I totally get it. Like, your 10's going to come back. You see it all the time. Messi's going to come back and get the ball, connect, get back up into his space, right? Seeing the awareness that the players had to, like, where are my partners, right? Where are my passing partners, my triangles? How can I exit out of space and trust that somebody's going to come into that space and actually have people come into the space to be available? Like, when we've been stagnant in the past, Tack, I think it's been because either our players are stagnant, right? Or players try to move and somebody doesn't react. And so there's an empty space in the middle where there should be a passing option, right? And so what ends up happening is guys are slow on the ball because they actually don't have the options because nobody's moving and nobody's filling space correctly. Or two, we just pass it around the perimeter, right? This is what we've seen for a couple of years now. Even when we've played well, we haven't seen this fluid, 1-2 touch soccer on the ball, combining, up back throughs. Like, it was beautiful to watch in the first half. And it was something where I've been a big advocate. I don't know if we can play possession soccer through and through against the top teams in the world. And I'm not saying that's where I'm at, but I have a lot more faith that we can combine a little bit against even potentially good teams when this develops. Remember, this is 4 games in, what could this look like a year, 2 years in? So that's big stock up on kind of where the team attacking patterns are going. And, just our ability to, I think, build from the back to the front.
It's crazy how professional players are capable of knowing where to occupy space, where to combine, where to move when they don't have to memorize 250 slides of PowerPoint before playing a game. Right? It's crazy. Right?
And they don't, nobody felt glued to a spot. In the Berhalter era, it always felt like guys were like glued to responsibilities or like overthinking. And yeah, you didn't feel that at all.
That's why we were always super slow in transition with Greg. While you saw with Pochettino, at least this game, we seemed a lot quicker with our decision making. We're moving the ball fast. We were actually disorganizing Jamaica with the ball, which was what Berhalter promised us. We didn't see that with him, but it looked more like that. And I think this is the standard we should hold in CONCACAF. It's correct. Win away, even if it's a grind and it's ugly, win away. Doesn't matter how it is. 1-0 grind. At home, dominate. And that's what we saw. That's the standard for CONCACAF for us. That's how it should be. My second stock.
Can I give you my last thing real quick? Because I think it pertains. I think it's big. If we're going to beat the better teams, where are we going to score on them, Tack? How do you think we're going to score on like the best teams in the world? Most likely
transition, most likely set pieces.
Correct. It's true. But if it's from the run of play, I think it's going to be transition, and the ability to see our guys think quick in transition moments is massive. If you're thinking ahead to, is there a path to upset someone? I at least see a path now, right? We're doing things that can translate.
Yeah, find margins when you play at a higher level, right? There's less room for error, and you have to be more goal dangerous to put yourself in positions to punish the opponent, and it's looking more likely like that. Of course, a lot can happen. We'll see how the World Cup goes, but ultimately we want to see progress now, and then the World Cup, that's where we're going to do the final judgment of Pochettino. But so far, so good. My other player stock up is pretty quick. It's Tim Weah. And for many people are going to say it's hard to pick sometimes the stocks up because, for example, Christian Pulisic was fantastic this camp, but his stock can't go up.
Yeah,
it can't go up. And then you're going to say, what about Matt Turner? He wasn't good in the past, and is his stock up? Not really, because he was still the starter, and now after camp, he's still the starter as a goalkeeper. And I'm still not sold on him. I'm still shaky, but.
Right.
Tim Weah, for me, I was even seeing takes about people complaining a couple months ago. Well, let's go to the facts. One, Weah got the red card against Panama that ultimately got us knocked out of the Copa America. Some people like myself celebrated Weah because that got Berhalter fired. Most fans were happy about that. We were not happy about the elimination, but ultimately what that led to, it was needed, a pain that we needed. So that was a redemption for Weah in terms of that. The second thing was I was hearing crazy takes, like some people saying that Luca Coleosho was better than Weah. And I was like, guys, I've watched Coleosho week in and week out. I just stopped covering him in the abroad because I got tired of it because he's just not choosing to play for us.
Right.
And I can assure you, I've watched this guy play. I've watched at least 8 to 10 Coleosho games, and I think that's enough to get a good grasp of the player's level. He's not better than Weah. Maybe in the future, maybe. Not now. And honestly, from what I've seen, very one-dimensional. I think Weah is more or less his ceiling. I think that will be his level if he develops. So Weah proved to us how dangerous, how effective he can be, how he can combine, and his confidence is high because Juventus is finally freaking playing him as a winger. He's scoring goals. He has like 4 goals and 2 assists this season. That's a pretty much hitting a record high from him. So Weah looked different, effective, good, dangerous. And I can't overemphasize how important it is for us to have two very good wingers, Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah, all confident, in form. And Pulisic was actually a 10 for us, but you get what I'm saying. He's also a winger. So I have Weah as a stock up because I just think he proved once again he is a locked-in starter until proven otherwise.
What Weah's proven is if you put him in a competent system, which even Berhalter, had competent a system at some point, and you surround him with pretty good players, he's a guy that his ability elevates when he's surrounded by other good players within a competent system, right? Because the things he's best at is, you talked about it, combining, right? Making runs that good players can find and connect with him, right? I think he defends well. He's a pretty good two-way player, right, for his position. So, yeah, it's a great one.
Yep. So Tim Weah, stocks down. I'm gonna start with this one because I really want to talk about this player because people shit on me when I talked about him on my 7 Things We Learned. He was actually on both videos of the 7 Things We Learned. It's Malik Tillman. His stock has to be down. He was poor in the first game, and people are going to say, but he played deep. Well, guess what? He played deep for PSV too, and I know it's not his ideal position, but it's not like it was a position that he never played in his life. The second thing about it was that same game when he came on and the midfield structure was destroyed by that because Johnny got injured, Tillman got moved to the 10 at some point and McKennie dropped deep because Pochettino was trying to sort it out, and it still wasn't working with Tillman. And I said that in the first 7 Things We Learned episode, to which some people, not many agreed with me, but plenty started to freaking destroy me, saying I was wrong, I didn't understand. And then I started to actually second guess myself, like, did maybe Tillman play well? I didn't see it. And people were like, he was winning his duels and all of that. So I pulled up the stats. He lost most of his duels, right? He had 9. He only won 3. So that's not most of them. It was just like there wasn't much that happened. He had 0 successful dribbles. Didn't really do much. I look at stats. He just didn't play well. And then in the second game, Pochettino gave him 0 minutes. No minutes. 0. Which means Pochettino very likely didn't like what he saw in the first game because he chose to play Weston as a 10. He chose to put A-Rob as like a central defensive midfielder. He chose Busio ahead of Malik Tillman. He picked Brendan Aronson ahead of Tillman. Kate Cowell came on. Zendejas came on. Tillman was the only player outside of the center backs and goalkeepers to get 0 minutes in the second game. Only player. So Pochettino didn't like something. Now, is he not going to give Tillman another shot? Was he maybe sending Tillman a message? I don't know. I think he should 100% give Tillman another shot because we know one thing I'm not going to accept is someone saying that Tillman's a shit player. He's not. Like, we've seen it he is not. He's a very good player. I am wondering if he cares or not about the national team, but to me, it's quite clear. His stock is down. This was the guy that was supposed to come in and challenge Gio Reyna for that starting 10. And right now, Gio Reyna with one leg would probably start for him for the national team. So Tillman is my stock down.
Yeah, I tweeted like the other night, he just continues to not bring it. And people got really defensive. He wasn't put in a good spot. He was put in, like, I just don't care, guys. Like, if you watch the game, he absolutely shifted up into dangerous spots. He wasn't sitting back, in front of the center backs the whole game. He rotated up. And when he got on the ball, he just continues to not be confident, not be dangerous. And like, I don't know. I get it. The field, all the other excuses people throw out there. At the end of the day, we have a pretty big sample size of Tillman with the national team now. What we don't have a sample of is him playing very well. So, and sometimes guys don't fit certain environments in the same way, and he's got to figure that out, or else I don't think he has a spot right now in the short term.
No. And who's your stock down?
Yeah, Tim Ream. I mean, I don't know if you can really. I think it's been down, but like, I just think our back line continues to look weaker and weaker with him, and I think his weaknesses, which are pretty glaring, cause people to have to cover for him too much. His passing at this point in time is good. He still opens up a couple things like with his passing. I just don't know if the trade-off's there. And my stock continues to go down. It's not like 100% down. It just kind of keeps going down, right? And I'm waiting for him to have a good camp and bring it back up to where it's like, oh, okay, there's a promising camp. but he's playing in MLS now, right? I mean, I just don't see where the career's going, and I don't see it going in a way that, you know, there's a path forward for him.
No, I agree with you on Tim Ream. I think I would be okay with him being like the vibes guy, very deep in the roster, but he can't be a starter for the national team.
Yeah, we got to figure it out.
Well, maybe Richards, because he wasn't fully fit yet. Maybe Richards will be the starter.
Yeah.
My other stocks down is Joe Scally, and it's less because of like the performances itself. I understand that the 2 goals he was involved and blamed for, rightfully so, in one way, shape. It wasn't all on him, but he had at least a good amount of blame on both goals. One of them giving the player the inside, which is just a rookie mistake. Anyone that played minimal soccer knows you force him out wide. I'd rather the guy get a cross than a wide open shot cutting inside, especially when the guy's right-footed, and you should know that. But anyhow, there were those mistakes. But the reason I say that too is looking at the way the U.S. men's national team is set to play with Pochettino, it just suits Sergiño Dest going forward so much with these players. It's going to work so well. And Dest can play a role like A-Rob did. He can pinch inside and be a central defensive midfielder. You can push him high up the field. The only role he can't play is the one Scally was doing staying as a central center back. But here's the thing with it. The gap between Scally and Dest is just so big, in my opinion, because Scally defensively does all right. I think he's a little bit better than Dest defensively because Dest's not great defensively. But the gap is not big enough defensively to justify switching one for another, because the gap between Dest on the ball and what he can offer going forward is actually huge between Scally and Dest. And with the way Pochettino has us playing, I think there's many ways that he can utilize Sergiño Dest, which I think lowers the stock of Joe Scally, because ultimately he will probably be the one getting benched. And I even think if Pochettino wants to, he can play that back 3 in possession with A-Rob staying back.
Correct.
A-Rob can stay back and you can push Dest, or you can alternate. Dest can stay, A-Rob. There's many ways you can work with it. But from what I saw with Scally, I think it just raised like Dest's stock in there. And Scally's the backup, though. He is definitely a roster lock.
I feel like you and I have been on the A-Rob stay at home for a while. I have been. And I've gotten a lot of pushback on that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to do what Poch seems to be committed to doing, one side has to stay back. So it's a choice between Dest being more forward and less defensive, or A-Rob, in my opinion, right? I don't think you're going to push them both forward. You can. There's some other options. I love either inverting Dest in the way that we inverted A-Rob tonight, or the way we've been pushing A-Rob up the field and keeping Scally home. That's even better. And you just saw, like, I like keeping Weah on the left. That was nice. Like him and Pooley combining over there. Dest on this side combining with Pulisic and McKennie right into the 9. So some good options. My last one is Musa, and it's it's a stock down because listen, we've seen him now play 4 games at that position, and I just haven't seen enough that makes me think, yeah, wow, there's a real path to him being a starter, right, or even a big contributor at that position. And if he's not going to be a contributor at that position, we haven't seen him in the midfield for a long time for the national team. So it's just stock down. You know, he clearly is worse than a lot of guys who he's going to be fighting for that spot. And in the midfield now, it's pretty crowded too, especially with guys like Tessman having good camps, Cardoso being on the rise for the last 9 months, right? You've got some things that are really hindering him to even get back into the midfield. So stock down there, and I'm not all the way out on him or anything. I think the stock's just got to be down right now.
Yeah, it's not that I disagree with you. It's just that I don't put his stock down because I kind of see him as a backup for the U.S. men's national team, whether it is midfield or out wide. I just see him as a backup. He's still useful roster player, right? Because he can play right back, winger. You can put him on the central midfield. He can work in multiple places, and you know he's not going to be bad, right? Maybe ineffective, but not bad. So to me, that's why his stock just didn't change. But I get what you're saying.
He started 4 straight games, right? I mean, whether you see him as a backup or not, he was a starter for 4 straight games.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
For me, his stock is down as a wide right player, right? Like I agree with you. I also see him in that light, but that's not where Poch has seen him. And I think you got to put his to me, his stock's got to be down. I'm interested to see if Poch rolls that back out. I can't imagine if we get more guys back from injury, that's going to be the case, though.
Yeah, I don't think he should be starting for the national team regardless of the position right now, unless we have an injury crisis, right? That's the only way it's justifiable. One big positive of this camp, and I mean, we've mentioned many, right? Even before we started, we talked about a lot, because it was a very good camp. We do add the context of a dysfunctional Jamaica, but we also added the context that 6 to 7 months ago in the Nations League semifinals, we really struggled with this same Jamaican. They were missing a bunch of players, and we should have lost to them, actually. We got very lucky. Do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, let me hear what you got.
So I'm going to help you out because I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to go with the mentality of the team. I did see some issues with it, especially in the second half. We're going to talk about the issues of the second half at home. But to win that game away in Jamaica, the field was crap. Jamaica was very physical. Like, Holgate got a red card, but he should have gotten a red card much earlier in the game. It was a tough game to win. And the players found a way to get a win with grit. They fought. It was just a different mentality. It was that team that you could see is like, there's some fight in them now, right? We don't look soft. And they pulled a very tough 1-0 win away in CONCACAF, where it wasn't against Grenada. It wasn't against Trinidad and Tobago, which we lost, by the way, last year. I thought there was progress in the mentality. There was a change in mindset of this team. It's like, let's freaking get the result. Don't settle for less. And they got the 1-0 win. Whether there were some factors of luck here and there, sure. There were also factors of bad luck, which we could have scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, and it would have been an easier win. But the grit was there. And even in the second game, the fight, the players there. And we didn't even have like our fighter, like Tyler Adams, for example. We didn't even have him there. We didn't have our fighter. And there was a fight in this team, which we hadn't seen that in a long time. The last time I saw some fight in this team was when we played Mexico under BJ Callahan. That was the last time I saw it.
So my big, I'm going to stay in a similar theme, a little bit different. So what do we hear for the last year and a half from a big portion of our fan base? Our players aren't good enough. The players aren't good enough. You guys have overrated the players. These guys are clearly just not good enough. And it was after, certainly the bad performances against good teams, but even like the 2-0 win against Bolivia, right? Which, like, it was not very impressive against a team like that. We got it done, but it wasn't like, man, our players look great. It was kind of grindy, right? The Jamaica game you mentioned, the TNT loss you mentioned, like on and on and on. All these performances, even the wins against bad teams, were kind of like, maybe our players aren't. And it even had me kind of thinking that tack, right? Like, man, maybe these guys really just aren't. And as soon as we get a competent coach, and I get it's only a half, and I'm not like ready to fully say, see, but like you saw some glimpses of like, okay, there's enough talent on this team. I'm not going to sit here and overrate it. I'm not going to like hype it up. We don't have world-class talent, but there's enough talent on the team that if you put them in a competent system, they can do competent things, right? And like and so it's a big positive for me because it was a step in the right direction for the player pool and thinking like starting to actually see and believe, okay, I see that the player pool can be good enough to do some things, right? Especially in region against this level of competition, right? Like big positive that like we should be able to handle business in the Gold Cup next year, right? Like that is going to become an expectation for Poch and this team. Like, hey guys, we're at home in this regional tourney, and we've seen what we can do against these teams. And you're a year into this coaching staff and this system, right? The expectation is going to be pretty big on these guys by that point. So I don't know. It's stock up / positive. Like the player pool looks like we can see a path forward again.
We should win the Nations League and win the Gold Cup, beat Canada,
Correct.
Beat Jesse Marsh, right? We need to get that revenge right there, and we need to also shut up Jesse Marsh. Okay, big negative. And I'm actually going to piggyback right on a negative that you mentioned last time, which was quite interesting. We talked about like players dropping their intensity. There was no intensity. And then you said you've coached teams where you would put players that were not good. And then you're like, why is the intensity dropping? And you're like, it's not that the intensity is dropping. It's just that they suck.
Correct.
And I think a lot of that is what happened in the second half because it felt like the intensity dropped a bit. And I'm not saying they necessarily suck, but there's a big drop-off with our starters and our backups, right? When Bucio, Brendan Aronson, Kate Cowell, Brendan Vasquez, all these guys came on, there was a big drop-off. You add that in the fact that the starters were tired and the fact that we removed like the best ones, right? We kept like Musa and that wasn't really doing much and things like that. I think the depth kind of failed there. And that to me is a negative. I could also point out to the defense, but that's obvious. The defensive mistakes were pretty obvious. And Pochettino talked about it himself. And I know that we were missing Gio Reyna, we were missing Balogun, Tyler Adams, Johnny, Dest. And if we had these guys available, we would have also had better options off the bench, whoever was benched and all that. I'm aware of that. But we've got to also keep in mind that there's a probability that players will be injured, right? The World Cup could come and players got to be injured. And I didn't really like the depth. When I looked at the bench yesterday and I was like, what are the options? Busio, Aronson, Vasquez, Cowles, and Dejas, and Tillman. Tillman's a good option, but again, we talked about him with the national team. Outside of that, these are options that are not going to really win you a game. Like, it doesn't change anything. Like, it's different when we had Gio on the bench in March and he came off the bench and changed the game. Honestly, even Haji Wright can be a bit of a changer when he comes in. He's not that big of a deal, but Dest if he was on the bench, but Balogun or Pepe, if he's on the bench, he comes on. Pepe's a game changer when he comes off the bench, and we didn't have that. We really didn't, and we saw that drop off. It was so noticeable. We lost the second half. It was 2-1 Jamaica.
Dare you say a super sub with Pepe?
Super Saiyan. Super Saiyan.
He does not want to be called that.
Super Saiyan. That's what we're gonna call him.
Yeah. So my negative is going to be very similar, a little different twist. We didn't actually make a sub until the 69th minute.
Nice.
And we pretty clearly, oh yeah, you love that. And we pretty clearly got outplayed in the second half up till the 69th minute. I don't think it's unfair to say we didn't. Like we did. They came out tactically and I think pressured us more just from a purely tactical standpoint. They applied pressure. They were an athletic side and they put a lot of pressure on us. And honestly, we didn't really actually react to that very well. So just something to kind of note on the things to get better at, right? Against pressure, right? We haven't been under a lot of pressure in this Poch era so far, but we got to do better than that because we totally got owned. It totally disrupted our flow, disrupted the build from the back. And then, it was 1-1, I think, at that point in time when most of the starters subbed out. So something to work on. And honestly, just the back line, man, like, which kind of plays into this. Like, I just don't feel a lot of confidence from anyone back there on the defensive side of the ball. So yeah, I'm excited to see how he can now grow what we're doing defensively at the same time as growing what we're doing in the attack.
Okay. Last but not least, we rate this camp on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm just going to cut right to it. I give this camp a 9. It's not a 10 because there were some issues to be addressed, but it's also, I'm not going to take away so many points because Pochettino actually addressed a lot of these issues in the press conference. So he's fully aware. He wasn't fully happy, but we got the result. We won away. We're dominant at home. We showed progress. The team on offense was much better. It exposed some of our weaknesses. It was close to a 10 out of 10 camp. I would say it's a 9 out of 10 in my opinion.
I had it as a 10 out of 10, and for this reason, like different camps are going to have different objectives, right? If you're in the Nations League, if you're in a World Cup camp, and you go make it to the semifinals, I don't care if the performances are ugly and there's a lot that could be better. That's a 10 out of 10, right? I'm just knocking on wood. I'm hoping that happens someday. But like the goal of this camp was to get better. It was to grow. It was to see growth, right? And objectively, we won away, which we did once in the Berhalter era in 6 years. And we took care of business at home and looked really, really good for stretches of the game. We looked dominant for stretches of the game. I totally agree. I'm not putting it a 10 out of 10 because it was perfect, right? I'm putting it a 10 out of 10 because we wanted to see the team take steps forward. That was all I was asking in camp 2, and we saw that.
So you gave it a 10 out of 10. I gave it a 9 out of 9. So we are so back. We're back.
We're back. We're back, baby.
We're
moving forward at least. Let's move forward.
Yeah, we're not going to really get tested the next few months. We don't play the A team again until Nations League, and it's also still going to be CONCACAF. But progress has been made, and me and Adam really wanted to be positive for once in our lifetime, finally.
It's been a long time, dude.
Trust me, we hate being negative. We hate being negative, but there was a lot of negativity. There was a lot of negative stuff in previous camps, and we have to be honest, and we have to call a spade a spade. But it's good to be positive, and I hope that the next few camps that we go forward here, it continues to go like this because it feels a lot better to be happy than to be angry. Okay? Yeah. But everyone, make sure to go follow Adam on X. He does great work on X, and the handle is below his head. And I'll probably remember to put it in the description of this video, but again, it's below his head. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go, and have a great day. Bye-bye.